Hi, Burbankers. Mike and Roy here again with another one of our series of interviews with Burbank City Council member candidates for the upcoming election. And right now we have Juan Guillen here. Juan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. We have a few questions we'd like to ask you, and Roy's got the first one.
All right, yep. And again, these are 10 questions that we and some other neighbors came up with, and want to see what you think about this. So, first one, what do you love most about Burbank?
I think it's the residents that make Burbank special and unique, and that's what makes our small town, surrounded by big cities, so special. It's the little people, the everyday people that do the amazing things that we don't hear about, and so that's why I love this city.
All right. And, Juan, you know that we're members of a community group called Save Burbank Neighborhoods. And Roy and I asked to get input from the neighbors and for some of these questions. One of them was, why are you running for city council?
I'm running to represent all those candidates that put up with the poor decisions made by the city council and just learn to live with it like a pebble in your shoe. And we just learn to walk or deal with the traffic or overdevelopment or the lack of direction and vision in the council. And so I hope to be the voice of the common resident and fight for the little guys.
Okay. This is kind of an important one, too. How much time do you see yourself reading each week to prepare for the city council Tuesday night meetings?
I guess that all depends on how much there is. I'm guessing at least 4 to 8 hours, depending on how many times we're reading all the material, and depending what's coming up. Big projects or certain items will need to be read several times, not just twice.
What is your impression of the current city council? And if you're elected, would you like to see any changes?
I think our current city council is dismissive of everyday residents when they bring an opposing view, and I think that's horrible. We need to listen to the people that we say we're going to elect and not just be dismissive of them because big development is around and the advocates for them are there. And I think we lack direction. So not only are they dismissive, but there's no direction. They want to build to balance a budget, yet we seem to not be balanced. So if the endless development is the way to balance the budget, then why aren't we balanced? Because in the past 4 or 6 years, we've not approved 2 projects that I can think of. The 550 project and the one on Verdugo, I believe, by the Fresh and Easy. But we've approved everything else. So we need to do things differently. Obviously, what we're doing is not working.
You have any thoughts on the Talaria Project? Where to begin, right?
It's not a need in the community. It's a want. And I think that's important. We need to distinguish the two. Sitting on council as council members is our wants and our needs. Is it great to have all this great stuff? Yes. It's a want, but it's not a need. What we need is attainable housing for everyday folks. We need to address our traffic issues. We need to address our infrastructure issues. There's a lot of things that we need to address. And what they do is they spend the money before we have it. Oh, this project will bring in so much money, not actually realizing the impacts that it will have on our neighbors, on traffic, demands on public services, and emergency services. And, we'll figure that out later. We just need to balance the budget one more year. We just need to get through it one more year. And that's why we go from a 5-year balanced budget to a $1.2 million deficit in a 1-year span.
Juan, would you please define your position on the scandals that have plagued our police department, as well as the current status of the BPD?
I think we have a lot of good men and women in the police department, and it's always easy to shine the light on the bad. And there's always 2 sides to the story. And I've heard the whole email ordeal, and I've heard it in 2 different versions. I heard where the assistant chief forwarded the racist email to his own personal email because obviously it wasn't appropriate for work. It needs to be united. There's issues, and I hear that even amongst the police officers, you're either with the chief or you're against the chief, and if you're against the chief, then you're not a part of our team, and so it's creating more divisiveness, and we really need a cohesive unit, especially when we're talking about the life and safety of our residents. So we need to do something. I don't know what the answer is. I wish I had an answer how to bring this, bring the police department together, but we were under FBI investigation, and obviously it wasn't because we were doing things properly. So issues need to be addressed, and we need to continue to work forward to have the best departments in the nation.
Do you have any qualms or concerns, thoughts on how Measure B was presented to Burbank voters recently?
I think Measure B was a 2-year dog and pony of the victory Measure B. And the story changed. If there was a timeline of how the message changed, it was, oh, it's for safety reasons. So you're saying it's not safe. Oh, no, we're not saying it's not safe, or it's this or that, or, well, we don't know if the high-speed rail's coming, so how can you develop something not knowing? Look at the Ritzy. Look at all the money they spent on the Ritzy. So if you're going to give me a budget, not project with today's cost to build, not including the inflation over 10 years, and you mismanaged a parking lot or a parking structure, how can I expect you to live up to what you're presenting? It. They said, well, this is the best deal we've had in a long time. And I think the problem is that we've had the same eyes on this problem and no fresh perspective. So I think we need a fresh perspective in some of the issues that we're addressing and contribute to it. I'm not a fan of one of the city creating a nonprofit and then not taking responsibility when things go astray, and two, spending taxpayers' money on a campaign. Because what's the next campaign that they're going to spend it on? You know.
Yeah. Well, and it brings us to the next question, actually. Recently, Burbank resident and Say Burbank Neighborhoods member David Spell broke the news of corruption in Burbank in regards to a very serious election fraud scandal. While he was revealing this scandal to our city council in his 5 minutes of public comment, 2 city council members were texting and typing and wouldn't even look up to acknowledge him. How do you feel about it?
It angers me because it's hard enough to make time out of your busy schedule to go to a city council meeting, and most residents aren't even engaged or informed, and we have members of the public who come, and then we're dismissive of them, and then after we're done with public orals, we thank them for coming. I'm not going to pay attention to you because I don't agree with your vision of what happened or version of what happened, but thank you very much for coming. I mean, I've heard, respect is a two-way street, and it seems to be that people get elected and they forget that they're there to serve. They are public servants. And it's funny because someone just sent me a message. They saw a picture where I was volunteering and they said, oh, you have the heart of a servant. And that's right. Like, I want to serve the residents, and I feel like our elected have a sense of entitlement. And it's not just locally, but we have the most impact in changing that locally. And so it's frustrating. There's a council member that tells people to keep coming back and don't quit. And sometimes in the moments of great frustration, I've remembered that council member's words saying, don't quit, keep coming back. And so here I am for the third time.
Good.
Yeah, you're living up to that for sure. What do you think about the misappropriation, $50,000 of taxpayer money that was donated by the Burbank Hospitality Association to the Yes on Measure B campaign? And do you plan on getting that money back, if elected, to the Burbank taxpayers?
Nothing sickens me more than wasting taxpayers' money. But now, I believe somewhere, they're all claiming plausible deniability. Oh, I wasn't there. There weren't people at the meeting. We didn't know about this. But how does it happen? There had to have been paperwork somewhere. The city had to have released the funds and cut the check to Measure B. So did the city not know what they were doing? Who's cutting the check? Because it's the city. The city holds that tax money. So we need to take responsibility for the actions. It needs to be dissolved. The city proposed this what is it called? The transportation.
The assessment on the hotels.
Yeah.
thing? Yeah.
Well, what's the whole organization
The
called?
BID, Business Improvement District.
Is it TIB or whatever it is?
Yeah. TBID.
They created it, not the private sector. If the private sector needed something, they would create it themselves. They don't need bureaucracy of city and city employees and taxes and pensions and other liabilities. They would do it at the Chamber of Commerce, a meeting room that's free. They would do whatever they want because of the private sector. They could add a fee instead of calling it a tax and eliminated a lot of overhead. I truly believe that it was created to help subsidize some of the employees, where we have way too many employees in certain areas that aren't producing. So how do we do it? We create a new tax and then we'll pay for that employee.
All right. It seems that much of the present city council is courting developers rather than representing the very residents who voted them in. How do you plan to balance the future growth of Burbank with residents' desires to maintain our small town legacy?
This goes back to what I had said earlier about direction and a vision. Is there is no direction, there is no vision. It's just we need to balance the budget. What do they want to develop? Well, what are they going to develop? They will develop what is most profitable for them, and you can't blame them. I don't blame them.
Sure.
I blame the city council for not giving direction. I recently spoke to the development of IKEA, and I said, you know what we need? And I think this would be great. I said, we need attainable housing for the average person. Teachers, first-year police, fire, first-year city employees that make a decent wage but cannot afford to live in the city. And what we do is we create a community. We have office space on the bottom. You can have a Starbucks. Then you have office space on the second floor, senior housing. Then you have attainable housing for those city employees. And then you have your office space. And then you have your high-end $3,000 a square foot property. And what you do is you've created a community because there's many different factions all in one building. We could streamline the buses there. Have the school district run a bus or run the city bus to drop off the teachers, eliminating some of the traffic during peak hours. Seniors tend not to be out driving early in the morning when there's high traffic or late at night at 5 because traffic's bad. So we eliminate some of the traffic there and we create a community, and we need to give developers direction of this is what we want. These are our needs in our community, and this is where we need to be, this is what we need to be developed, as opposed to, hey, mixed usage, we don't need parking, and we don't, everyone's going to ride their bikes everywhere. Because the fact is that Verdugo bike lane is empty 99% of the time I drive it there. And so what are we doing when we're forcing things down people's throat instead of listening to them and saying, hey, what we need to fix our light system so that it syncs better so that traffic can flow smoother. Or we need 2 lanes going into Costco and 1 lane going out to make sure that 5 points moves smoother, which will change once the off-ramp is put in. Then we'll need 2 lanes out, 1 lane in, because the freeway off-ramp will alleviate some of that. But we just need novel concepts, some common sense.
Okay, well, we're up to our last question. I will preface the last question with when you drive Verdugo, then 99% of the time that I'm on my
he's
bike.
a bike rider. He's a
bike rider.
He rides his bike
There's
everywhere.
one person.
Yeah,
he's the one person in the
hotbed.
And I don't think I've ever seen you there. Oh, I'm kidding. Anyway, but anyway, that's a whole nother topic. But this might be the toughest question we have to ask this evening. Mike and I arm wrestled over how can we make the toughest, most hardball question, and this was our winner. Are you for Indians or Bulldogs?
I'm a bulldog.
Be careful now. Careful.
I know where I'm at, but I'm a bulldog, and you gotta pick a side and stick with it. And I'm a bulldog through and through.
That's great. Way to take a stand.
Yep.
Juan, thanks very much for answering our
appreciate
questions, and all the best in the upcoming election.
Thank you.
This is Mike and Roy. We'll see you with the next candidate.